The government doesn't know where my spouse is. Hi, I'm Jim Hacking, immigration lawyer practicing law throughout the United States out of our offices in St. Louis, San Diego, and Washington, D.C., our nation's capital. In today's video, we're going to talk about the situation that arises from time to time when the government is confused about where your spouse is. They don't know, is your spouse in the United States and going to seek adjustment of status, or is your spouse overseas and wants to get an immigrant visa to come to the United States and then get their green card after that. And this happens because petitioners usually screw up their I-130. When you file an I-130, a standalone I-130, and what that means is without an adjustment of status application, just an I-130, generally USCIS is built to consider and to think that your spouse is overseas. And the reason for that is that most people who file an I-130 and a 485 together are seeking adjustment, and that's the typical way that things go, especially if the petitioner, that is a U.S. citizen. So when different situations arise and different scenarios arise, sometimes the government gets confused. Now, sometimes people mark the wrong box, and even though their spouse is overseas, they will mark a box that says that their spouse is in the United States and wants to adjust status. That confuses the government because the I-130, if it's filed by itself, is generally going to be sent after approval to the National Visa Center for consular processing. They just sort of assume that you're going to do this all overseas. So that's where the confusion lies. When the petitioner and the beneficiary are in the United States, or when the petitioner and the beneficiary are overseas, confusion can arise. And so you're going to have to file a form a lot of the time called an I-824. An I-824 is the form in which you elect, after the approval of an I-130, where to have the case finally adjudicated. And what I mean is where the visa is issued or the green card is issued. So when this happens, it's very difficult. It's very upsetting because your spouse has been waiting for a really long time to get the I-130 approved. Now you finally got it approved, and lo and behold, you figure out, well, the government is unclear as to where my spouse is. And the I-824 can take months and months. So it's very important that you fill out your I-130 correctly and that you make it clear where your spouse is. Now, there are plenty of scenarios where the beneficiary might be in the United States but can't file the 485 with the I-130. That is, if the petitioner is a green card holder and not a U.S. citizen, or if the beneficiary is in removal, a lot of times you're going to have to file the I-130 by itself. And that's where confusion abounds for people in the United States. And then, of course, for people overseas, it's when you mark that box indicating that they're going to adjust status, and now you've got to get them to change the ship. So think of your case as a big ocean liner, and your ocean liner has been pointing the whole time towards the National Visa Center. Now you got to get it to point the other way. So if the beneficiary is overseas, you need to file the I-824 to let them know that, yeah, we made a mistake. Yeah, we don't want to adjust status. We want our spouse to get an immigrant visa. Now, if the beneficiary is in the United States and the government thinks it's an overseas case, there's a better way to do it. If the beneficiary is eligible, you can simply file an I-45. You can skip that I-824 step. You need to get that I-130 approval notice, file for adjustment, and you don't have to go through that hassle of the I-824. And that's a long hassle and a long delay. And you can avoid all that if the beneficiary is eligible, if there's an immediate visa available, if they're in status, if they are not in removal, then you're going to be able to probably file a 45. Now, this is a tricky maneuver. This is not the kind of thing that you should do without an attorney, but we've had many, many cases where the government was confused about where the beneficiary was. The I-130 was approved. They were saying, hey, you need to file an I-824, and lo and behold, we just filed for adjustment of status and got that bad boy approved. Hope this makes sense. Hope you understand what I'm trying to say, that you might have to file the I-824, you might have to pay that fee, you might have to wait, but there are sort of some things you can do given the circumstances of your case to get the whole thing done a little bit quicker. If you're looking for help and you need to file an I-824, or you need to clarify to the government where your spouse is by filing for adjustment, and you're thinking about hiring a really good law firm to help you, you should give us a call at 314-961-8200. Email us info@hackingimmigrationlaw.com. You can join our Facebook group. We have over 10,000 immigrants in that Facebook group talking about the immigration process every single day. We also have our YouTube channel where I have hundreds of YouTube videos where I explain different immigration concepts and my thoughts on the process and all kinds of good tips and answers in there. Speaking of answers, you can join our Immigration Answers show, and we do a show 3 or 4 times a week where I just answer immigrants' questions. If you want to get alerted as to when we are going to do our next show, you can send a text the word show to 314-470-3300. You'll get a link to the waiting room ahead of everybody else, and you will be able to ask me a question for free on the Immigration Answer Show. Thanks so much, and we'll see you next time.